our first partner highlight, and I really feel like we should have like the Rocky thing, because these are the Rocky theme on our partner highlights. But Stephanie Sisson from the Bellingham Food Bank is here. Stephanie, where are you? Oh, there you are. I have been looking for you all morning. Yay, yay, yay. So this is, and I love your haircut. But this is what happens when we're able to let our partners dream. We know that in many areas, and in Bellingham is one of those, Whatcom County, where there are challenges with food insecurity, and especially amongst the marginalized communities. And so Bellingham Food Bank has pulled together partners to do a project and help address some of those issues. And so I'm going to let Stephanie share with you. And this is called the Cultural Alimentos Project.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And I'm going to invite up our partners here. So Steve and Alex, if you could come up with me. And before we get started, thank you so much, Matika, for your laughter and for sharing everything that you did. Thank you. All right. Mostly I just didn't want to stand up here alone. So thank you to the Northtown ACH. Thank you for everybody who is here. And I'd like to start off with some introductions. So my name is Stephanie Sisson, and I'm the Communications and Outreach Coordinator for the Bellingham Food Bank.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Perez, a project manager at Northwest Agricultural Business Center.
Aloha. My name is Steve Bader. I'm a native Hawaiian, and I work with the Refugee Immigrant Services Northwest in services in Everett, but we're doing some outreach work out in Skagit, Whatcom, with Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities.
And thank you so much. And all three of our organizations have come together to form this project. Before I really talk about what that is and introduce it and what we hope to accomplish with it, I want to give you some context for kind of where it kind of originated within the Bellingham Food Bank. So for starters, we are the busiest food bank in the state of Washington, and we serve over 20% of the Whatcom County population. And that looks like serving 5,000 households on a weekly basis. And a household is reported to have 3 people in it on average, but I suspect that that's much higher. We're looking at entire cities of people basically coming through our doors every week. And I'm not saying this to brag, because it's a weird bragging point, but I'm saying this so that people have an understanding of the context of our work. I think that what a lot of people think of when they think of food banks is not actually what we do. The traditional model of food banking is to take the leftover, the unwanted, the food that was transferred to a grocery store just to make the shelves look full so that it could be later thrown away. The traditional model of food banking is to collect all of this food and then pool it in a community pool or a bank and redistribute it, which I think is a really great idea. But if you've worked in food banking for a long time, this methodology becomes really, really sad. There's a sense of disempowerment because you become obligated to take whatever food anybody is willing to give you for free, and you can never ask for anything different. You don't get a sense that you have any control over what you give out or how you give it out. And you know, you begin to really work within the confines of what you have. A lot of food bank people are extremely resourceful and extremely resilient, but a lot of times it feels like you can never challenge the system that is creating the disparities that you see in your community. So you get used to working with what you have, but you never get to think about what could be, and you never really get to look at the needs that your community actually has, because if you were, you would see that you're not meeting them. So with that, we're not trying to do that here at the Bellingham Food Bank. And there are really, like, with our numbers as they are, we cannot sustain ourselves on the traditional model, and we have not been able to for a while now. We purchase most of our food, and we're talking like 8 million pounds of food that are moving through our doors every year. And we're developing kind of new ways of working, new ways of being, and new ways of thinking about the food system within the context of food banking. And when we look at the people that we see on a day-to-day basis, that we have relationships with, that we talk to, because there's all these folks that are coming and using our services, we know their names and we talk to them. And when we do that, we learn that there are 28 languages spoken on our shopping floor, and that about a third of people that we have talked to say that they don't read or speak English at all. And so with good consciousness, we cannot be the type of food bank that isn't centered on the actual needs of our community, because then we would just be perpetuating really violent systems of food injustice, of colonization, and of imperialism, because a lot of folks are displaced. A lot of folks are immigrant, refugees, and migrant communities, I would say, is probably the largest portion of people that come to our food bank. So, you know, there are several things that we are doing. Well, there's many things we are doing to become more centered on our community needs. And one of those is to purchase the food so that we have control over the quality, that we can say this isn't good enough, we're not giving it out. And we have control over what types of food that we buy, and we can prioritize culturally familiar foods, cultural relevant foods, and things that promote health and well-being. Most of the food we give out is produce because, guess what? Folks have diabetes. So it's really important that we continue that. And you know how I opened with the statement about our numbers, just so that I could get a clear picture. We're not really small, we're very large, and we are supporting 20% of an entire county. And this is a community-led, community-funded organization. And I say that so that people understand what we're looking at, but the narrative that gets taken from that a lot of times is, well, how do you know that all those people that come in really need the food that they're given? Do they really need it? And that comes from that scarcity model of we have to work with what we have, and therefore we must limit the people, we must limit the people that we serve, and we must tell them that they are wrong, that they are the problem for being here. And so I'd rather ask, you know, well, how do we work together to get everybody the food that they need and in the way that they need it? So as we're working to become a food access point in the county, I'm really excited to announce this project and our partners here. So I'm going to pass it off first to Steve, to talk about the Refugee and Immigrant Services Northwest portion, and then after that, Alex will take it away and conclude with the Latin American Business Development Center. So.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. And if any of you have the opportunity to take a tour of the Bellingham Food Bank, it's very impressive what they've built there. Clean, organized, great inventory. When we made our visits there, you could see that this operation is run very well. What Refugee Immigrant Services Northwest, our relationship and partnership with the Bellingham Food Bank is around getting information from ethnic cultural groups in Whatcom County, which is an interest of ours. And in my specific area is to outreach Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander populations. That population has grown quite a bit in the North Puget Sound area, but it's also very spread out. And we have sort of the challenge of making sure we're connecting with those communities or those individuals within those communities, often in a way we can build relationships first. And building relationships, as we heard from our talks this morning, that is the foundation of getting anything done. And before you try to serve a community, you ought to have a relationship with that community first. And so it's a bit of a challenge there, but I think it's what's exciting about what we're doing. We're going to be organizing focus groups. In the case with Pacific Islanders, we're organizing talk story sessions to make sure we find out not just what the food needs are, or whether there's food insecurity there, which is important, because then we can inform the food bank about what kinds of foods that they may be able to get donated or purchase. So that is important. But beyond that is, what are the living conditions? How are people preparing their foods? And the idea of accessing a food bank is not something that's real comfortable with a lot of ethnic communities. They don't see themselves accessing that. And what's impressive, I think, about what Bellingham Food Bank is doing is that there's various ways that you can get the food. You can walk into the main facility. You can drive through and get your food at another site. They can prepare boxes and deliver it. So there's all these ways of accessing that food. And if the community doesn't know about it, or if they're not comfortable accessing it, then that's sort of where the challenge is. And with Pacific Islander communities in particular, there's a little bit of resistance based on the unknown. If they don't know who you are, they're not going to be ready to accept what you give them. And I can say a quick example is that in our outreach efforts out of our organization, we've been meeting with churches in Skagit Valley that serve Pacific Islander communities. And that relationship was very helpful. But even after a number of meetings and discussions and phone calls and texts, in one of the last visits I had, right in the middle of it, the pastor says, "By the way, how do you know me?" And this is after a number of interactions already. So it reminded me I had to just step back and go back to the beginning. But that same pastor, once he got comfortable, is who we went to when we got, during the holidays when food was donated to our agency. I was able to call him, and he was in Whatcom at the time. He drove down to Everett, picked up food, and drove back up to Whatcom to deliver that food. And so that relationship, I think, having built that, is the way we can access those communities. And I didn't know at the time we were talking to him that he was seeing families from Whatcom Island and Skagit. And so that one connection and that one relationship, was very helpful for us to kind of survey, who's out there and, where they're living and what their needs might be. So, I think that the more of these type of collaborations that we can get, the better off we're going to be. Because, again, we're kind of having to slow down and spend the time to have that relationship. And in systems, and we're all working systems, we got milestones we have to deliver, and sometimes that doesn't match up to working with humans and communities. So the more we can do it this way, the better. And we're very grateful for this relationship that we've developed.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's honestly a blessing and an honor to be here because it's hard to find so many like-minded folks nowadays. And I have a lot of folks that I know here and organizations that I've had the pleasure to work in the past, either individually or in projects. So I'm happy to be here sharing this amazing project with our partners here. A little bit of history of the work that I'm doing and have done. My organization is called NABC, Northwest Agricultural Business Center. It's a nonprofit, and it started back in 2006 with the hope to support the local farming community here in Skagit. Right now, we're actually about 14 to 16 counties that we're covering. I was actually hired on back in 2017 with the hope of doing the same work, but in a bilingual format. So the organization was providing business technical assistance and workshops and trainings to farmers with the hope to help them be successful. However, they realized that there wasn't that much intention or support to help the farm working community when it was going from a farm worker to being a farm owner. So they saw a huge gap with that, and they wanted to do something about it. So they got a grant, which had a horrible name. It's called Socially Disadvantaged Grant. And that's how I got hired on. So I made a promise to myself to do everything I could since I started to make things better in a way that I wanted to not educate, but share information with folks of how we have to be careful of how we word things because it has tremendous impacts on the folks that we're trying to help or folks we want to work with. So the program started back in 2017, and it was one person, it was me, and I did not know where to start. So what I did was to try to listen first and learn what was going on and what was going on with other organizations and other people. But more than anything, I spent about close to a year doing a lot of research and talking to people and communities and learning more about the agricultural industry because I did not know much about agriculture. So I needed to do a lot of learning. And during that journey, I learned that the Latinx community had too many barriers, and there wasn't one way of going about it. So after talking, researching, and spending a lot of time with community leaders and other organizations, I came back to my boss at the time and I said, we have to do a combination of efforts here. We need to do the one-on-one business consulting with folks, but we also need to provide trainings and workshops to encourage them to also keep growing and learning to become successful. Because we can't just make them believe that things are just gonna happen by themselves and they don't invest themselves in also learning. So my approach with the work that we do is trying to meet people where they're at. And what does that mean? That means that we need to figure out what is it that they need in that moment and what is it they need to get to the next step. So we do that approach by figuring out a way to collaborate with other people or other organizations. So my tagline is, I like to collaborate to make good things happen. And honestly, that's been how we've been able to grow and be successful with these efforts, because there's no way I would have been able to do this alone. So partnerships like with Bellingham Food Bank and the support with many other organizations, Northtown ACH gets it. They've been supporting amazing projects, amazing things, and that's honestly a blessing because we need to really collaborate and do things together. There's no way one organization is able to do this. So my mission has been to trying to plant seeds. Whenever I come up with a project or an idea, I never want it to be territorial. I want other people to copy it, to do it, because I don't know how long I'm going to be here, or if I choose to take a different approach and moving on somewhere else, which I'm not thinking about that, not scaring anybody else. But for me, it's about planting seeds and about seeing other people get motivated and inspired and seeing the value of what we're doing. So I'm one of those that thinks of an idea and I'm like, I'm not sure how I'm gonna do this, but I start sharing it with people and they're like, oh my God, let's do it, right? So I had the blessing also to working a couple years with Bellingham Food Bank, and they are an amazing example of listening more than talking. So that's one thing that I really valued since day one when I had the initial conversations with them, that I said, this is what's going on, this is what we need, and this is some things to consider to not do and to do. And they took it. They completely, listened and also wanted to learn. And that's honestly the approach that we all need with different communities. Because if we think we know it all, or if we think because we learned something in school, because of our own culture, and we're gonna go with a different culture and just pretend that it's gonna happen, it's not. So we definitely are doing all the work we're doing very intentional. And the project that we're doing with Bellingham Food Bank is very unique and also creative, because I came with a proposal and I said, I really don't feel comfortable just asking questions to farmers, because it kind of just seems that they're tired of just being asked, what is it you need? How can we help, right? And at the end of the day, many times the farmers don't feel respected or valued, in a sense of like nothing really happens. They just got a picture taken and people are claiming, saying things that, oh, they helped, but in reality there's nothing much tangible that they were able to really see that they were helped or supported. So with the approach that we did a proposal with Bellingham Food Bank is to make sure that we made the farmers feel valued and respected. So the funding that's available is going to be for their time and their expertise, because they have valuable experience and that has value, and also for paying for their time. But more than anything, after all the things that we're going to be talking to them and the questions and doing these things in a culturally appropriate and respectful way, we're not going to just say, oh, this is what they need. We're actually going to provide funding to help alleviate those gaps and those barriers and those struggles. So again, taking action. If we find out about what the struggle is, what the problem is, to make them more successful in their business, we're going to try to figure out a way to support that with actual funding. So it's not just learning, and that was good to know, it's also providing the funding for it.
I hate to cut you off. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Steve. And they will be here. I hope you all will be here through lunchtime and the rest of the day and tomorrow. So if you have other questions about the projects, that please don't hesitate to chat with them. Appreciate you so much. Thank you. And I love what you say, Liz, about Collaborative Action Network. And so they're putting their network to action. So thank you.